my friends. I'm very happy to be back, and I'm really happy that I can talk to you guys in a new way, digitally. So while I have you all here, let's do some housekeeping stuff. So first off, me and Mr. Kilmoyer miss you very, very much. And we want to hear from you guys, even if we're doing digital learning. So feel free to email us or comment directly on Google Classroom, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or help you through this interesting time. We're all in this together, and we definitely want to be able to be as helpful as possible. So, moving on, I wanted to take this time in this video to talk about what we were learning before this extended break affected us. So, you guys recall that back in January, we kind of talked about the birth of our government. We had the creation of the Constitution. We had the birth of the different branches of government. And we had America becoming a sovereign nation. You'll also remember that there were a few disagreements on how our country should look. For example, we had the Democratic Republicans. Remember, Thomas Jefferson was one of these. He really thought that America should be run by the average people. He thought that a smaller government would be better. There was also the Federalists, like Alexander Hamilton, who thought that big government was better. He thought that we should have a strong centralized government if we wanted to be a strong nation. So why am I reminding you of all this? I know we learned this forever ago. Well, the big thing is that it's important to remember that since the beginning of our country, people have disagreed on stuff. People have not seen eye to eye on a lot of different things. So let's put this concept on our big idea list. So, since the beginning, people in America have disagreed on stuff. With this being said, we have managed to push our differences aside. We still got stuff done, even if people didn't always agree with each other. Let's think back to when we bought the Louisiana Purchase. Remember that? This was a huge deal. So you remember that we doubled the size of America, and we got a really good deal on the land. Do you remember how much that land cost? Yeah, it was $15 million. So you remember, because Lewis and Clark explored this new land, we discovered a lot of new species that were new to us. We kind of understood the terrain better that we had bought, and we also really helped the economy.
May I say what a great honor it is to meet you?
Bit of a whistle-stop tour. Love the hat, by the way.
Thank you. It's beaver.
But, as we learned, there was also negative side effects to this progress. This purchase caused Native Americans to be pushed off their land, and we also saw a lot of native species kind of suffer and die because of overhunting and the human impact. Think of the California condor. So from this, we get another big idea, that progress has a price. So sure, sometimes progress has like a dollar price, like $15 million being the price of the Louisiana Purchase. Sometimes it also has a symbolic price, like the cost of human life. So let's also put that on the big idea list, that progress has a price. Before our Corona vacation, you guys remember we talked about a lot of different kinds of progress. For example, we talked about the Industrial Revolution. We also talked about westward expansion. Not only did we grow in size as far as our population, but we also grew in power. We saw this increase of power especially after the War of 1812. Remember, after we fought that war, we showed England and the rest of the world not to mess with us. We weren't just these 13 colonies anymore. Now we were a strong, sovereign, independent nation. So all of this being said, this kind of brings us where we left off, right? Our economy is pretty strong, we have a growing population, and our land stretches from sea to shining sea. This is all great stuff. We really are like a world superpower. But under all of this greatness that's happening, after all of this strength, there's something that's going on underneath the surface.
You see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Because unfortunately, underneath this tough guy facade, our nation's kind of struggling. Let's look back at our big ideas here. So 1, people disagree on stuff. And 2, progress has a price. These concepts have always had a big impact on America, but moving forward and moving on to our next lessons, we're really gonna see these things manifest into big issues. You see, the United States might be this big tough guy, but underneath, we're starting to crack. There is a divide between the North and the South, and it's really starting to manifest, and this crack is growing deeper and larger. Now, the North and the South, they've always seen themselves as different. But as time goes on and we go further and further in history, we're going to see these differences become more clear. And soon, they're going to be hard to ignore. Moving forward, we're going to talk about all the different ways that North and South was different. We're going to talk about physical things like geography and climate, but we're also going to talk about cultural factors too. Specifically, we're going to look at the word ideology and understand how that affected how the North and South thought. So, what is ideology? When I talk about ideology, what do I mean? We're talking about this whole system of beliefs that affects everyone's everyday life. Ideology affects your view on politics, how you talk to other people, your expectation of our government. Ideology also affects what you consider to be progress. So, because of this, ideology can also cause disagreements. Think about the different ideologies you see now, like Democrats versus Republicans, pineapple on pizza versus no pineapple on pizza. We're also going to extend this conversation about ideology when we talk about the differences between the North and the South United States during this time. So I want you to consider this word ideology as we move on to our next couple of lessons. But I also want you to consider this word while you're watching the news, talking about politics, or thinking about America and the way it is today. Ideology impacts all of these things. So today we reviewed a bunch of stuff we'd previously learned in the last weeks and months. But we also went over some key concepts, our big ideas. So first big idea is that since the founding of America, people have disagreed on things. There's always been arguments, there's always been different ways of doing things and different perspectives on how this country should be run. 2, progress has a price. So while we see America growing larger in size and stronger in power, we also know that there is a price to this progress. Sometimes there's a human price, like Native Americans, or the factory workers that struggled during the Industrial Revolution. And sometimes there's a physical price, like $15 million for the Louisiana Purchase. And finally, we talked about a new vocabulary word. We learned about the word ideology and how that impacts everyday life, from politics to economy to just how we talk to one another. So friends, to wrap things up, I'm really happy to be back, and I'm really happy to be here talking to you guys. We are definitely in a unique situation here, but I know you guys will rise to the occasion and make the most out of all of this. We're still going to learn, we're still going to have fun, and we're still going to talk about social studies. Thank you, friends. I hope you have a really good rest of your day.